Extra money's been announced for those most seriously affected by hepatitis C after receiving contaminated NHS blood transfusions in the 1970s and 80s. It follows a review into compensation payments for patients with advanced liver disease. One-off payments will be doubled to £50,000 and there'll also be annual payments of £12,800. Lynne Kelly's cousin Lee Sugar died after contracting hepatitis C from contaminated blood. And we can talk to Lynne now. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Could you tell us a little bit about Lee's story? What happened in Lee's case?
Well, Lee was a haemophiliac, and after a horse riding accident when he was 14, he had to have an injection of factor VIII, which was the normal treatment for haemophiliacs to make their blood clot. It wasn't a life-threatening accident, but he would have been in a lot of pain. So he received the treatment, which was around 1980 when he was 14. And he was told about 14 or 15 years later that he had contracted hepatitis C because the factor VIII was made from donated blood from American prisons, and the prisoners were carrying the hepatitis C virus. And Lee died last year in June, aged 44 years, from liver cancer. We've been campaigning for the last 18 months for compensation because Lee's widow has received nothing. And we've been actively lobbying in Westminster. We've been lobbying the MPs in Wales, Owen Smith, Jonathan Evans, Jenny Willett, Wayne David. We've got a lot of support in Wales. So we've been back and forth Westminster. We were promised the announcement before Christmas, and we've actually received this today. And we're extremely disappointed, because of the amounts that have been offered, which again is £12,800 per year if a person with one of the haemophiliacs with hepatitis C contract second stage hepatitis C liver disease. And the people that have got stage 1 liver disease are very, very ill, and lots of them are unable to work because of the chemotherapy treatment they're on, and they don't receive anything under today's announcement. The second part of the announcement was that it was going to be £50,000 lump sum for widows and dependents, so that's for, when someone dies of hepatitis C. And then finally, we've heard that Wales may not be included within the announcement. It's for England only, which obviously is a great disappointment for us because we've been actively campaigning. And with my correspondence with Edwina Hart at the Welsh Assembly, I was told that this was being dealt with at Westminster by the Parliamentary Secretary of State for Health, Anne Milton. So we've been concentrating on lobbying the Westminster MPs to be told today now that Wales might not be included.
Mm. And I mean, this has been itself a long time coming, hasn't it? And as you said, there have been many debates in the House of Commons.
There have been many debates, but we've actually been campaigning for 25 years because, there's been no admittance of faults by the Department of Health. It was known in Whitehall in the 1970s that there were problems with imported blood, and the Department of Health chose not to act because it was a money-saving exercise. It would have cost too much money. So haemophiliacs will continue to be treated with contaminated factor VIII, and it wasn't until around 1982, I think, that people were actually becoming ill, and then they found that, they started to tell people about it. But it was known within Whitehall that there was a problem with the blood. And I've actually had an email from Lord David Owen, who was Health Minister at the time, and he recommended self-sufficiency in UK blood because the viruses were known about. That the blood continued to be imported into the UK. So we're not just talking about a mistake that the Department of Health didn't know about it. It was well known.
Well, we have actually heard from the Welsh Assembly Government, or from a spokesperson, and they say that the Health Minister is going to consider the implications of the recommendations as quickly as possible for those people affected in Wales. So we are expecting and hoping to hear more on that and how it will affect people here in Wales later on. But for the meantime, thank you ever so much for talking to us. Lynne Kelly there, thank you. This is Good Evening Wales. It's coming up to 7 o'clock, and we can get more now on the news that extra money's been announced for those most seriously affected by hepatitis C after receiving contaminated NHS blood transfusions in the 1970s and 80s. It follows a review into compensation payments for patients with advanced liver disease. One-off payments will be doubled to £50,000, and there'll also be annual payments of £12,800. So far, these payments have been confirmed for England, and the Health Minister here in Wales says she will consider the implications of the recommendations as quickly as possible for those people affected in Wales. Well, back in October, the House of Commons debated the issue after the MP for Pontypridd, Owen Smith, secured the discussion, and he joins us now from Westminster. Good evening.
Good evening, Sean.
Now, there are some uncertainties attached, particularly to patients in Wales. We can explore those in a moment, but first of all, your initial reaction to this announcement.
Well, I'm pleased that we got the government to look again at this. I'm pleased that as a result of the debate we secured last year, they brought forward a statement and have increased the amount of money and the range of support that will be available to the 2,800 people who are still living with hepatitis C as a result of being contaminated by NHS blood products. But the money isn't enough. It is less than was provided in similar circumstances in Ireland, and £50,000 a year, albeit a doubling of the sum made available previously, isn't a lot when one considers the desperate lives that many people have lived as a result of having infected blood products given to them in the NHS.
And with regards to patients here in Wales, the Department of Health, the spokesperson, has said tonight that payments are a matter for devolved administrations, but we stand by ready to implement on a UK-wide basis if they wish to participate. So really, it's not really clear what's going to happen here in Wales.
Well, it's a complicated circumstance because effectively there are two types of funds. Ones that were set up pre-devolution and that were available for people who've been infected with HIV. These are the Eileen and the Macfarlane Trust funds. And then there is the Skipton Fund, which was set up post-devolution in 2003 to administer monies to hepatitis C sufferers. Now, what today's announcement does is effectively bring the payments in line between those patients suffering with hepatitis C and those that previously have suffered and in many cases died as a result of HIV. And the arrangement for the Skipton Fund that was established in 2003 was that devolved administrations would meet the costs out of their budgets and that England would administer the scheme on a pan-UK basis. What I find deeply irritating this evening is that the Secretary of State, Andrew Lansley, Secretary of State for England in health obviously, effectively conceded in the Commons that there has been little or no discussion with the National Assembly about this scheme and about this really significant change to it, and with it the additional cost to the NHS in Wales and to the Health Department in Wales were we to follow suit. No discussion of that, and simply passing the ball to us to administer it. And I hope we will do likewise in Wales, but I think there's been an unnecessary additional burden and worry placed on people like the family of my constituent Lee Sugar, his wife Barbara and mother Margaret in particular, who are in the dark tonight, and they needn't have been, because the government could have debated this with Welsh Assembly counterparts and got this resolved before the ministerial statement.
No, we spoke to Lee's family, a member of Lee's family, earlier in the programme, to the cousin, and she was very concerned, as you can imagine, very anxious to know what would happen, and did make the point that so much time has already elapsed.
Absolutely. I mean, no governments are covered in glory on this. We didn't do enough when we were in power, and the current government still isn't doing enough. And for the people who've waited a very long time, we're talking about people who were infected in the late 1970s and 1980s, half of whom, in respect of the group infected with hepatitis C, have already died. other people have died over Christmas waiting for this announcement. They really do need to get on with it. And one of the things they could have avoided is this unnecessary hiatus with respect to Wales and Scotland, had they only had the decency to live up to the respect agenda and actually engage in some adult conversation with us. It's not good enough to say they wanted to present it to Parliament first. It should have been worked out in advance so that they could have been coordinated responses and people in Wales wouldn't be left in limbo.
Well, I'm sure we will be hearing more from the Assembly Government on this. For now, Owen Smith, MP for Pontypridd, thank you very much.